Hello, welcome to Horror Score. We're your hosts, Jesse and
Vanessa.
And this week's episode is
The Visit by M. Night Shyamalan.
That is right. You may notice that, again, the movie is not on the table. We always make sure we have legal access to, have purchased, bought, whatever, any movies that we're reviewing on Horror Score.
Yeah, he actually gave us a private screening in his home theater, which was really cool of him. Thanks, M. Night.
The truth is, it's $3.99 on Amazon Prime
to rent it.
We
$14.99 if you want to buy it.
If you want to buy it, which I'm weird about buying digital movies. I don't know if anybody else is, but I don't get it. I either I don't know. I like to own this is a whole bunch of movies over here. I like to own a physical copy, or if I'm going to rent it, that's fine. But $14 to own a digital copy just seems real weird to me. So we're going to get into this 2015 hour and 35 minute PG-13 horror film. Any opening remarks, Vanessa?
It was, for PG-13, it was definitely up there with the R spooky movies.
If you had asked me, I would have guessed it was an R rating. I would say it was in my memory, thinking back. This was my second watch. What was yours?
It was my first watch.
Thinking back, I thought this movie was rated R because there's some nudity, there's some graphic content. Yeah, it's elderly nudity, but it's nudity. We get some full on butts in some scenes.
I think everybody sees elderly nudity by the time they're 8. So.
There's a weird version of this movie. Apparently, there's a made-for-TV version, which has, I guess they couldn't take out the butt scenes because they were too important to the plot, but they have them blurred out, and the poop scenes have been totally taken out, which I thought was, no spoilers here on Horror Score, but
I'm just learning this, but it's part of the trauma.
Yeah.
This film is feces and very important.
It's hard to talk about a lot of this movie without giving away.
Because it's an M. Night movie, and
spoilers.
so he's got his twists, and so it's hard to discuss what happens, but we'll do our best.
Yeah, and you go into an M. Night movie. I mean, he directed The Last Airbender, which I admittedly have not seen, and he did Stuart Little as well.
I admittedly won't see it.
Okay.
Admittedly.
You sort of start looking for what could the twist possibly be. There's probably a twist here somewhere. So I find that sometimes I'm looking too much for the twist and just not enjoying the movie like I should be. But the basic synopsis of this movie, before we start, is what we got: 2 teenagers.
I wouldn't call them both teenagers. One of them's still in middle school.
12, 13?
Yeah.
I don't know. I felt like he was a teenager. But
all right, 2 kids.
2 kids. They get permission from their mom to go spend the weekend with her parents. And she has not talked to them in years because they had a falling out.
Since she left home when she was 18.
Yes.
That is a long, long time to not see somebody and then go send your kid. She puts them on a train.
Yeah.
And sends them to her parents' house.
And that was a sad scene, too, of her, running along the side of the train, waving to her kids. And, it's a good movie. I would say it's solid.
I loved it.
Yeah. I didn't even know this movie existed until after it came out. Someone was like, "Oh, have you seen the new M. Night movie?" And I was like, "No. What do you..." And it was like, "Yeah, The Visit." So did you even remember seeing previews or hearing about this movie until after it was out?
So, no. I heard about it on a Shudder fan page on Facebook. As a found footage film, somebody said, "Give me some recommendations for a good found footage film." And I personally am not a fan of the found footage subgenre in horror, but there have been some great movies that have come out of it, and honestly, this is my favorite M. Night Shyamalan movie.
It's not mine, but I totally understand where you're coming from, and I would put it up there. Because he's been, a lot of M. Night fans will tell you he started awesome, did some good things. There was some questionable years there, but this movie was
good. How can you compete with a magnum opus like Stuart Little? How do you after that
Right, where do you go from Stuart Little? Yeah, well, I mean, he didn't write Stuart Little, but he directed it, and that's where he got his money to do The Sixth Sense. And anyway, are you ready to get into story?
I was born ready.
All right, let's. Yeah, we're doing that. Do you want to start us off, or would you like me to start us off?
You know what? Sure.
All right, take us into story, Vanessa.
As far as story goes, and I thought it was really creative. I thought it had some great meaning behind it. There was some appropriate emotional pull to get you invested in all of the characters, and I gave it a 15 because it was such a solid story. Like, I cared about the mom, I cared about the kids. They were just like good kids. Like the as far as the characters themselves, yeah, they were good and well behaved and nice kids. But I think the child actors did a really great job. Just being very authentic, good kids for that age.
I know it's a found footage film, and this is actually the first found footage film that we've featured on Horror Score, but I found myself forgetting that they were acting sometimes, where I just get caught up in the movie.
They were just good.
Yeah. I gave Story a 14. Holds my attention the whole time. It's got some twists and turns. It leaves you wondering, and there's some, like, the plot, leads us somewhere, and by the time it ends, I was like, yeah, it's a solid story. This is good. Now, I got a weird question. The grandparents are referred to in this movie as Nana and Pop Pop.
Pop Pop.
I've heard Nana like a ton of times. Like, a lot of my friends had Nanas. I had never heard the term Pop Pop before for a grandfather. Myself, I had a Gram, strictly Gram. It was never grandma, grandmother, Grammy. For me, it was just Gram and a Gramp or Grandpa. And I also had a Meme and Pepe. What did you have?
Because you're French Canadian.
I am. My Robitus is a French Canadian name. Guilty as charged.
I had Grandma and Grandpa. Like, every time the kids said Pop Pop, like, you think about was Ben Stiller.
Why?
Because in what was the Blue Steel movie?
That was Zoolander.
Zoolander, when he's talking to John Bach, and he goes, "I've got the black long pup." That's all I could think.
It's been like 20 years since I've seen Zoolander, so and I can't believe the movie's probably actually that old, but I'm gonna take your word for it. So I guess my question is, did you have or know someone who has a weird name that they had to call their grandparents? There's some odd ones out there that come out sometimes.
I had to call my grandpa Bill.
Let's hop into villain real quick as we move along. And as I was saying before, if you want to comment anywhere below about any of these grandparent things, please do. I gave villain an 11, even though it's hard to do this without ruining anything. But at the end of the day, the villain is an elderly couple, sort of, and I just didn't feel like they took us beyond sort of the halfway point. Movie's good. There's some legitimate horror scenes, but I gave them an 11. That sometimes they were very unsettling. Where'd you rank them?
I gave villain a 13. I said that they weren't that scary until we knew until we had that M. Night Shyamalan shift where you know everything that's going on. Like, they weren't scary until that point, until we knew what was really going on. So I can't really.
But the best that we can, do you want to take us into the horror category and elaborate on that a little bit more?
Well, I'm not going to really elaborate on that in horror because my horror score has nothing to do with that, really. But I gave it a 10 for horror because I said meh. A lot of the time the movie is treated like a paranormal kind of film, and that's really easy to do when you're doing the found footage shaky cam kind of thing. Like, that's very classic. So I was kind of just going the whole time like, please don't make it another one of these paranormal, scary old person ghost movies. Like, please don't do that.
I'll say that they weren't as scary as the main character in The Taking of Deborah Logan, which I found oddly like freaky and disturbing partway through. But Becca and Tyler, I think, they have a lot of bouts of terror at night. Like the house is pretty normal during the day, but at night while staying with their grandparents' house,
the grandmother has
sundown. Yes, sundown.
So
she gets a little bit weird at night. So during the day, regular grandparents. At night, it's a little bit weird. This is not a spoiler. First couple minutes of the movie, they're like, she's got sundowners.
And the whole poop thing the grandpa has is incontinent, so he poops himself.
Yeah.
That's not a spoiler. He does that.
Yeah, I gave horror a 12. There's not a lot of horror tension in the movie, but when it happens, like, I feel very unsettled. Like, sort of like, ugh. You want to go first on effects?
No.
I will.
That's you.
Sure. A weird thing about the effects, and I actually didn't notice it during the movie, but as is true for most found footage films, there was no soundtrack. James Newton Howard usually always does the movie for all of M. Night's films, and no music. No, unless there was actually music like on the radio in the car.
Is James Newton Howard related to
Bryce Dallas Howard? I don't know. I have no clue. I didn't even think of that till right now, but maybe we'll look it up after. So maybe it'll come up. The answer will come up on the screen. How about that? Yes, there's the answer.
I knew it the whole time.
So I ended up giving effects an 8. There isn't really a lot to speak of. I did some research. Like, I was checking to see if, like, The Village or, like, Signs, they actually, like, were... In The Village, they built that whole village, and in Signs, they literally built that whole farmhouse so that it was set up exactly correctly for how they shot the film. But I didn't find anything about this. And then when I saw the budget, it was a $5 million budget, which is the absolute, like, by a lot, lowest M. Night Shyamalan budget of all time. So I'm thinking they just filmed in a house where they were able to film, and after paying for everything, there just really wasn't much in the way of effects. But it didn't stand in the movie's way. But I did give it an 8.
They didn't need it. Maybe all that money has been in his way.
The directing was good, cinematography was good, but without the music and without really much visual stimulus, nothing looked bad. But I gave it an 8.
I gave it a 10 because, like I said, with the camera, I really liked the girl. It's an older sister and a younger brother. I liked the girl as the storyteller, basically. Like, she was kind of in control of it the whole time. And like I said, I'm not usually a fan of the found footage. So, they did a great job.
What'd you give it?
I said I gave it a 10.
A 10. All right. And do you want to start us on the last category?
Sure. S Factor. This is where I got the majority of the points for me. I gave it 18 horror score points.
I think that's the most S Factor points you've ever given a category.
And let me tell you why.
Okay, I'm ready.
It tapped right into my childhood nightmares because, so I used to go and stay, like, I didn't really know my dad's side of the family very much, and so I would just get picked up and like driven like 1,000 miles away when I was like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to go stay with that side of my family for like a week. And the idea of that, of being so far away from my mom and they could just kidnap me. They could just take me. Even though they were like sweet and they were my real family, like, it just scared the hell out of me. So I used to make my sister come every year to go do that, and I would not be able to sleep at night. Like, the night was like the worst, kind of like for these kids, like, where like that's when they feel like the least safe, and so I just had like a lot of dreams like that whenever I was a kid, where like nothing was wrong, like you couldn't see anything that was off on the surface, but you just have this like deep well of anxiety that something's wrong or something's going to go wrong because you're so far away from home.
Okay.
18 points.
I mean, I know where you're coming from. I used to like staying at my grandparents' house whenever I could. When my parents were like, would you like to spend the weekend at your grandparents?
But your grandparents lived where?
Same town, or same town over.
Yeah, so they did not live over 1,000 miles
Correct.
away.
Correct. And
you saw them more than once a year.
I did. I saw them all the time. I did have a really unsettling night at an elderly person's home. It was the night that I saw Forrest Gump with a couple of friends from school. Their parents dropped us off at the theater and forgot to pick us up. So Forrest Gump is a long movie. So when you go to an 8 o'clock show, it got out. We had to walk the movie got out around 11. We had to walk for a really long time to get to their great-grandmother's house, bang on the door, wake her up. Anyway, when we got settled, I had to sleep on a metal cot with no pillow, and she gave me a really small bath towel as a blanket. And I remember she handed it to me, and she went upstairs. And the kids were, I don't even know where my friends were sleeping, but I was alone in this living room with this little tiny blanket shivering. So I know where you're coming from, sort of.
Wait, she didn't have a couch in the living room?
I had to stay on a cot. I don't remember. I mean, it was a long time ago. I was a child. So, but I gave this category 11 points. I genuinely liked the movie. There is an Annabelle poster, a little Easter egg in there. And there was something I really liked. I kept my eye out for M. Night. He appears in all of his movies. Did not see him in this one. But I did see, there was a sort of a reference to another M. Night movie. The old, I guess Nana, because they don't have names. They're just Nana and Pop Pop. Mentions that these aliens live in the water. To watch out for the water. There's aliens that live in there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was sort of a reference to Lady in the Water, I think. I mean, I don't see how it couldn't be.
Well, now you just ruined the twist of Lady in the Water for people.
The movie's been out for a long time. So, so that puts me at 11 points for that. I don't have any other closing remarks until after.
The kid.
The kid.
So the boy, the little brother, is such a dweeb, but he is like a rapper. Like, he really wants to be a rapper, but he's got some skills. He's got some talent. Obviously, the lyrics were written for him, and he's not like doing this himself. But it was very cute to listen to him rap and everything, except he ends every single rap with ho.
Yeah, like he'll be doing okay, and then just throw in something like oddly childishly inappropriate,
which is very accurate. Oh, I wanted to talk about going back to like the kids actually just being good actors. There's at one point where they start to get really like suspicious of the grandparents, and they want to leave, and they're like trying to leave, but they don't want the grandparents to like let on that they feel weird, and so they're like in the yard playing, and he throws the ball up, and he's like, ha 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 ha.
And she's like, yeah, what are you doing?
Like, catching after it, and he's like, this is how kids play. And it was just genuinely funny, and like what a kid would say.
Yeah. So, are you ready to cut to Vanessa's one sentence synopsis?
Sure.
All right, take it away.
Maybe if you haven't seen your parents for 20 years, you don't just send your children 1,000 miles away to go visit them unaccompanied. So, thought.
So that leaves me with a grand total of 56 horror score points for The Visit.
I gave it 66 points. Again, turned out to be my favorite M. Night Shyamalan movie. Which gives it 61 points combined.
Combined average, all right.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That's in definitely the upper quarter easily of the movies we've reviewed here on Horror Score. We just want to remind you that we do have an email address now. We are horrorscorereview@gmail.com, in case you want to get hold of us.
And we have a Twitter page, which is @ScoreHorror.
Yeah, so, if you want to recommend an episode, or you can just say hi, or mail us a present, that's where you start. Also, a quick plug, check out Make Me Shudder. A couple of people that we know are reviewing every movie on the streaming service Shudder from numbers to Z. And I believe at the time of filming, they're just getting into the letter C. So that is all we have for you this week, and we will see you again next week.
Stay spooky.